Hey guys, Deacon James, publisher of High Speed Magazine. I got to sit down with Kellie Madison, the director of Never Back Down Revolt, which is the newest offerings from Sony Pictures in the Never Back Down franchise. Kelly happens to be the first woman to take on the franchise and really put a whole new spin on Never Back Down and how we know it and how we came to be aware of it. Many of you may remember how we were doing the interviews for Never Back Down with Sean Ferris by Rachel Riley back in 2008 when that first came out. And so now we've kind of come full circle here with Kellie Madison. And it was a great interview, and as horrible as I am at doing interviews, and I hope you like it, check it out. So you are, I believe, the first woman to ever take on this franchise.
I am indeed. Isn't that exciting?
So how did that happen? How did it come? Because you're also an actor.
I haven't acted probably in 12 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I just went behind the camera after when I moved to Los Angeles, and writing, producing, and directing in that order. And I have no interest in being in front of the camera. So no thanks. I just like being the puppet master behind the scenes, behind the monitors, where I'm like this, watching the movie and just crafting this beautiful story and being involved in the creative is so much more fulfilling to me. Whereas, no offense to actors, because I love actors, but they're only a small portion of the whole process. Whereas as a director, you get to interface with wardrobe, production design, your look at your film, your lighting, your sets, everything you build everything. So it's just so creatively fulfilling.
Okay. So now the process for you, like, how does that start for you? Like, what drew you to this project? How did that come to be?
I knew the producers, they had seen The Gate.
Okay.
And so when they were writing the script, they decided to completely rebrand the franchise and make it female empowered. And so they hired a female writer, and they worked on the script for at least a year. And then when they went searching for, okay, now it's time to attach a director, they thought about me and they sent the script to my agent, and I read it and I immediately connected with it. I was like, this is my jam. I'm your girl. Like, a cool story about human trafficking, but told in a really unique way, where these girls are scouted and hunted for their skill sets and put into this seedy, dirty underground world. And forced to fight each other is really intriguing. And then the best part about the movie is the redemption, where they rise up and revolt and fight back against their oppressors. And I'm like, that's my story.
Right. No, it was a really unique thing. It's not something we see very often. We don't see. It's usually the women are in trouble, and here comes the big strong man to save them.
Right.
So it was a really unique thing. And I remember reading the synopsis and I'm going, well, she's such a badass fighter. How does she end up kidnapped? And that the explanation for that was pretty amazing.
Right?
That was my question. Right. That was my question. Like, hey, if you're such a badass fighter, you're not kidnapping me. Yeah. So it was kind of a curious thing, and I loved the without spoiling the movie. That was a great, that question was answered. And I think that's a really important part, because I think people can go like, wait, like, why do I want to watch this if she's such a badass that, and it's explained.
And thanks for saying that. I'm glad you like that element, but it's all about and I don't know if if you've seen any or read any veritable human traffic stories, it's all about grooming them. It's the grooming, and it's the luring them in, it's giving them a reason. Oh, come on, let's hop on a plane and let's go here. And it's such a deep spiral of manipulation. Yes. And they know what they're doing. Like, these are seasoned pros, and it takes multiple people to do.
Yes. And it always involves a woman.
Yeah.
There's always a woman on the team that's involved in helping that grooming.
You noticed, right? Like with the
Oh, yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein ring.
Oh yes. Oh, absolutely. And it's you know, the interesting thing about how this was portrayed was so perfectly done in that capacity of the fact of, here we bring you here, and for this reason, seemingly a legitimate reason, and then once you're here, all this other stuff is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's almost always, you almost always have a woman as the ringer.
What did you think of our female ringer?
She was amazing, and
Good, right?
she was very much Miranda Priest, like Devil Wears Prada type. She was very seductive, you know, in her mannerism. The way the actress portrayed that was wonderful, and it's a very seductive thing. I mean, I deal with a lot of models, and you be shocked at all the modeling agencies in Bulgaria and all these different places, and I'm like, no.
Yeah. It's scary, right?
Yeah.
It's so scary.
And that's the lure, is that of the whole, you know, we have a legitimate reason, we're playing on your hopes and dreams, and now you're stuck, and you know, there's no Liam Neeson for most of these people that are gonna come get you.
Yeah. And it's funny because we had some lines written in the script and we only left one in there, which she kept saying, my brother's going to come for me. My brother's going to come for me. But the movie isn't about your brother coming for me. The movie is about you yourself, you know, leading the revolution and the revolt and rising up. And I think it's so great that they aren't waiting for a man to come rescue them.
Yes.
They're like, yeah, they tackle it themselves, which is really fun to watch.
And the guy was, you know, it's kind of funny because there was such a reversal in the portrayals of the characters. The typical paradigm is the woman is the bungling one, you know, she's running and trips and falls for no reason.
Yeah.
And in this one, it was reversed. The guy was the bungling screw up that created all these bad environments and situations that his, you know, gets his sister caught up in this situation.
Oh, I know. Yeah, what an idiot.
I absolutely love, oh, well, that would be a spoiler, I guess, but I absolutely love how they go about doing what they do, and, you know, how they culminate the situation without giving it away.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it.
But I was thinking about it, and I said to a friend of mine, I said, oh, this is some Spartacus action right here.
There's some, I was chatting with someone earlier, there's some fun moments in that scene that you're talking about. I think too, with the characters, because I tried my best in casting and in directing them to make them as deplorable as possible.
Yes.
Like that these characters are so disgusting, but realistic and grounded and odd in different ages, as you see, without giving it away. And that, like, who would be, like, we had multiple conversations, like, who would be an audience member at a fight ring like this that would pay so much money to see this happen? Like, what kind of human being are you? And yes, I'm happy to kill you. So, you know, so the ending hopefully is like super fun.
It was really enjoyable, which, you know, it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, right.
You don't want to give up the climax was a really great way of ending it, and it's not something we typically see. You know, because there's tons of human trafficking movies done, and the rescue and the attempts and the whatever. But this was you know, people get arrested. It's like the old G.I. Joe cartoons where everybody gets arrested at the end. But this was so very different and so amazingly crafted. Now I've got with the amount of action taking place in that final sequence, was that all happening at one time, or were you shooting select pieces of that and then edited together?
You have to do it in sections, you know, like you have to visualize the whole thing, and it took us a while, as you can imagine. It's like it took us a while, and you get in a room with your director of photography and with your stunt coordinator, and you go, okay, how do we map this out? And it's kind of like when the stunt teams on big, huge budget films like The Matrix use those little mini cars
Mhm.
and they put, for the big car sequences, and they
Yes.
put them on maps, and they're like this, so you kind of do the same thing, and you get it all mapped out really strong. So then this section, okay, then we're gonna do this section, then this girl goes there. But then you have to track too. Okay, well, while Olivia is over here, what is Neetu Chandra doing? What's Jaya doing? And then, so we had to make sure to track every actor from when they come in. So it's definitely a challenge because it all happens, like, you said, so fast, but that's what you have to do. You just have to really prepare and map it all out.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering, because some of it looked like there was a whole lot of stuff happening in the frame while
There
we're
is.
focused on our actor or primaries, but there's so much happening in the background. I'm like, that's got to be a nightmare to put that much together.
It kind of is, but it was so fun.
Okay, okay. It
So
just
fun. And if we had more time, which everyone's going to hear me on all my interviews complain about, no time. If we had more time, it would have been more. That's all I'll say. Like, if it was up to me, it would be more. And like, there were some, I'll just put it this way, some beats that we had planned out, and then you end up losing because you didn't have time. So we're like, okay, so let's pivot, and we're going to do this instead because we had this big thing planned, but we need an hour to shoot that, and we only have, half hour to shoot that. So it's just, that's what happens in indie filmmaking. I'd like to start getting bigger budgets.
Of course.
And that just buys you more time, more shoot days, which any director wants. So I really wanted it to be like more, but for what we had, like, happy with what we did for our resources.
Right.
But of course you always want more, better.
See, I genuinely believe though that these types of experiences help craft and shape better artists in terms of directors, actors, whatever you're doing, because you're used to doing so much with so little that when you have a lot, you're able to like really just let loose.
Soar, hopefully.
Yeah. And still come in under budget.
Yeah, I can't wait.
So now you chose to shoot this in Europe.
That was Sony's decision.
Okay.
It was a tax credit thing. London gives you a really good tax credit, the UK.
Okay.
So, and I think they've shot several films there before. So they kind of had line producers that they worked with and an infrastructure that they've worked with before. So I don't think it was a big decision for them. I think they're like, yeah, we're shooting this in the UK. So that's just what it was when I was approached with the film.
Okay. So how long were you out there for?
About 2.5 months.
Okay. Oh, that's not very long at all.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, not too bad. I mean, 20 shooting days.
Wow, that is nothing.
Yeah.
Because normally they get like what, 60, 90?
Yeah, days?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Only if you're Spielberg.
For those big features, yeah, they get like 90.
Yeah. The big features, but if you're like anything under 70 million, you won't be getting that.
Okay.
So 15 million, 20 million, usually like, 25, 30, 35 shooting days is like a really good, amount of time. Like, again, we were at 20, which I think was a little too low.
Right.
So if we could have had an extra 5 days, I would have been really confident in our footage. But yeah, but it varies. Again, it's budget dependent. But yeah, those big movies are 60, 70 days, but there's not many of, those just the tent poles.
Right. Yeah, it's just amazing. Like I said, it's just amazing that what you accomplished with such little time and short of resources. And so you basically, your shooting pace has to be pretty sprint time.
It was marathon. Beyond insane.
How many hours a day do you figure on set?
Oh, and this is the thing too.
Oh.
Because we were in the height of COVID. We were like right in the middle of COVID. So the UK had a rule. Typically a film day is 12 hours.
Right.
And you get like an hour lunch and you get, a nice 12-hour chunk. And that's usually what you contract your crew members for, is a 12-hour day. But in this case, because of COVID, they knocked our hours down to 10.
Oh.
Do you know what a big deal that is?
Yes.
That's an extra 2 hours of shooting per day.
Oh, I know.
That's insane. Like, I was like, no, don't take away my shooting time. So that's why we were so rushed. We didn't even have a 12-hour day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been on sets like that where it's, where you're told, normally you used to shoot in 12 hours, but they're like, oh, you got to do it in 6. And it's like, I wait. But you get it done.
It's hairy. It's hairy at times. That was the only stress, like it was sometimes a stressful relationship with myself and my director of photography, because I'm like, shoot, go, go, go. And then my producer is yelling in my ear. And then it was just making sure, because everyone's stressed, that you're going to get all the footage in the can.
Okay. So now working with Sony, I mean, they're a huge company, which they just kind of came out of nowhere in terms of movies. How much does the studio, like how often is the studio in your ear, like telling you to make changes, or did you pretty much get free reign to create as you saw best fit?
I did not. I did not have free reign. So in this particular case, and every film is different, they were, I think, pretty heavy-handed in the script phase. It's my impression that they went back and forth with notes between the writer and David Zalon, the producer, and then the Sony exec. So a lot crafting the script. And I do know that when we were in pre-production, if we had any dialogue changes, we had to send them in and make sure we got them approved. So we sent them in. I don't know if you always read them, but we were always emailing, here's the new script. But then during production, not at all involved. Nothing. During production, I didn't hear a peep from the studio, but I still had producers barking in my ear. But during post is when Sony came in, and we had some pretty hefty disagreements. And I won some battles and lost some battles.
Right.
But, for example, the opening of the movie is not my intended opening.
Okay.
That was a Sony intended opening, and I fought for that, and I lost. But that's what the interesting thing is about being a director, though, right? It's like you see my name on the movie, so you're going to make an assumption that that's all my choices.
Right. And that's why, and that's why the question, because
yes, I know it's a great question.
Because people people don't really think about how much involvement studios actually have in the script, in the production, the post.
Yeah, they do.
And it's
And I guess in this case we only had one particular exec, but I hear on bigger films you've got 2, 4, 5, 10 I don't know, you got all these execs, and that's why movies, in my opinion, my humble opinion, movies can go downhill fast, creatively, if there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yes.
It's like you have to hire your director and believe in them, sink or swim.
Right.
If they fail, they fail and their name's on it. If they succeed and their name's on it. But if you micromanage everything and handhold everything, I'll never forget, I ran into Fede Alvarez not too long ago at the Directors Guild, and he directed one of my favorite films, which is Don't Breathe. And Don't Breathe was amazing. I went up to him, I'm like, dude, you're masterful. Like, it was such a brilliant film. You should be so proud. And he looked like the soul had drained out of his body. And I was like, what's wrong? And he had just came from the success of Don't Breathe, he went to the studio and did Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Okay.
And that experience, he's vocal about it, was so bad for him that they were so heavy-handed creatively. They tied his hands, this, that, and I guess he was fighting with them. I don't know the details, but I know he said it was one of the worst experiences of his entire life. And so those stories are so heartbreaking, because you have this brilliant director. Like, you already know he's talented. Sam Raimi was, mentoring him and took him under his wing. You got this brilliant director, and then you bring him into a director film and you handcuff him. Why? Why? I just don't understand. And then you watch those docs on Netflix, the movies that made us. They were trying to do the same thing with Robert Zemeckis on Forrest Gump. They were trying to say, don't do this.
Back to the Future.
All these directors are like saying that the studios try to interfere, and usually they're interfering for budget reasons, but a lot of time it's just creative too, and giving crazy creative notes. And you've heard like the studio wants to change the title and make it some crazy horrible title. I mean, you just hear every story under the planet. And I got to tell you, we need the studios. We love the studios. We want to work with the studios, but it's a challenge sometimes. So what can you do? But it's that dance of like, it's business, it's commerce, it's creative, and then combining that all together. But the reason why our business is challenging is, number one, it's subjective. So you could think, oh my God, this scene is brilliant and look how it's edited. And I'm like, oh my God, that's trash. Like, it's just, but it's subjective.
Right.
So, you know, there is no right or wrong in our business. And that's why people have like falling out and they don't get along, and they fight because everyone's so passionate and you're fighting for your passion. But even though some of the process of Never Back Down, I didn't agree with all the decisions, I just made sure I was as flexible as possible, because what other choice do you have? That's our job as artists. You have to be flexible, and you know, there's people paying for the film, so they want to be happy as well. And so it's a difficult dance, I got to tell you, but it's a dance that just has to exist.
Yeah, because we saw a lot of that on G.I. Joe.
Oh, really?
With Snake Eyes, the studio was constantly changing his mask, his visor.
Oh,
And it was just like, this is how Snake Eyes looks, you idiots.
right. So even you get frustrated at the studios as an audience.
Right. It's like, stop changing him. Stop doing these geeky, dorky things. And yeah, then you find out like, oh, the studio was we were fighting with the studio while we're shooting this, but we need to shoot that.
I mean, you hear it all the time. Yeah, it's obviously, I'm not reinventing the wheel, but yeah, at the time it's tricky.
But I don't think it's spoken about enough, honestly. I mean, you had a great story, and if I hire a professional, I need to trust that professional to do their job. And as you said, it's very subjective. So I might have to sit there and watch it and go, yeah, you know, Kelly, this is, I see the idea, but maybe the execution could be different. Because I'm giving you now an audience reaction.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, if your director is like a train wreck and they're not listening, or they're not being collaborative at all, or they're incompetent, or they're showing up drunk on set, like, you know, there's whatever the reason is, if your director is really not doing their job, obviously you should interfere. But that's not always the case. It's just for some reason they deem themselves to be filmmakers, and if you haven't made a film, you know, yourself, you're not a filmmaker. So you should let us do our jobs, you know.
So now, what would you say to someone like, I'm gonna direct a film, short film or commercial or whatever? What would be your advice to someone to get started?
In directing specifically?
Yes.
I would say try to dip your hat into as many different areas of filmmaking as you can. So for example, read some screenplay writing books. Okay. Maybe dabble at a little bit of writing so you know that side to it. Make sure you're paying attention to what a producer does, because that relationship is going to be, like I just said, an interesting dance that you're going to need to navigate. And then go take an acting class, because a lot of directors don't know how to talk to actors or work with actors. And so a directing class could change your world in that regard, because then you know what it's like on the other side of the camera. And it's just, I've talked to directors before too, that they try to do almost every job on set and know what the art department is doing and and that way you'll be the best leader you can be. If you know the job of each department head and what they go through and their challenges, if you go into it just blind, I think you're going to be a pretty unlikable director if you can't relate to all the different department heads and have like a pretty deep knowledge of what they do. So that's why I would start there. And then I just tell filmmakers to generate your own content. Okay. Build and create your own content and get a team of people together that you can work with and do that, because just waiting around for someone to hand you a career is not going to happen. Right. So you have to just build it yourself. Okay.
So you joined the ranks of some really pretty good people. Penny Marshall is the one that always stands out in my mind.
Like Penny, huh?
Oh, I grew up with her. Laverne and Shirley kind of deal. I'm one of those fans.
Oh, but I know, she was amazing.
She was. I mean, there's still so few women in Hollywood. So it's great.
Thank you for recognizing that. Yeah, it's still the fight. It's still the fight.
It really is. And it amazes me, because I'm thinking to myself, telling a story is telling a story. You're either good at it or you're not. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you're 10 years old, 80 years old, you're Black, you're white, you're male, you're female, you're transgender. Telling a story, if you have the ability. And so I think it's also awesome that more and more women are stepping up into those roles. And honestly, I look forward to the time when there are more more women telling a variety of stories, not just women's stories, but a
Oh,
variety of stories.
totally. Most of the stories I write are actually like male leads.
Okay,
I don't just write stories that empower women. I just write stories.
that's it.
I just write story. I would love to do like a Saving Private Ryan, like a war story, or a lone survivor. Like those military stories are very moving for me.
Yeah.
Like Catherine Bigelow doing a Hurt Locker. So
Right.
it doesn't have to be, oh, you're a woman, so you have to direct only women. That makes no sense to me. But in general, times are changing and we're evolving, and which is great, but the numbers are still egregious. It's interesting, like, to study how did Hollywood become just a white boys club? Like how and why? Like why did it just become like only white men can like direct, and specifically direct, because there's definitely more diversity in writing and producing.
Right.
But directing is that like hot spot. I don't know why, like that they don't want to let you in.
Yeah.
So we're still fighting the good fight, and I'm glad the consciousness is changing and we're evolving. But we still have to keep going. Can't just be like, well, we're letting 5% of features directed by women now. That's good enough.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
And you need bigger. I mean, I cannot think of her name in the moment. I'm old. Who directed Wonder Woman?
Oh, Patty Jenkins. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that was a massive, successful film. And beautifully done. And it's kind of a crazy thing because, like, I can't wait till we get to the point where it's no longer, oh, they're a woman. Oh, they're a Black director or a woman director or a gay director.
Right.
And we just get to the point where it's like, so-and-so directed the film and everything else falls away. It doesn't matter because there's so many people that
right.
represent those demographics are doing it. And I think with women, it's women didn't think that they could do things until they saw, nobody ever thinks they can do something that they've never done until they see somebody that looks like them do it.
You're so smart. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. So we're helping people learn and grow and change just by doing it.
Yes. I mean, Mae Jemison, the first Black woman to go into outer space.
Right.
She told me she would never have thought about that had it not been for Nichelle Nichols on the bridge of the Enterprise.
Yeah. That's right. And you have to watch other people pave the path for it. And then just hopefully more of us will be in that dial. And again, it's changing, and sometimes it gets awkward because the pendulum has to swing uncomfortably far in the other direction just to come back and kind of balance out. And all we're asking for is balance.
Yes. Trust me, I can relate.
I know you can. I know exactly. We're on the same team.
So I mean, it's like I said, this thing is it's great, and it brings attention to a very serious problem. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Oh gosh,
it
was a joy talking to you. Spread the word about the movie and let me know when this link comes out. And thank you for your time.
You too. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
I hope you liked what you saw. Check out Never Back Down, Revolt, coming out on Blu Ray and DVD on Tuesday, November 16th.